The Development of Taste by T.S. Eliot. From The Use of Poetry and the Use of Criticism, 1933. The majority of children, up to say 12 or 14, are capable of a certain enjoyment of poetry. At or about puberty, the majority of these find little further use for it, but a small minority then find themselves possessed of a craving for poetry, which is wholly different from any enjoyment experienced before. I do not know whether little girls have a different taste in poetry from little boys, but the responses of the latter I believe to be fairly uniform. Horatius, The Burial of Sir John Moore, Bannockburn, Tennyson's Revenge, some of the border ballads, a liking for martial and sanguinary poetry, is no more to be discouraged than engagement with lead soldiers and pea-shooters. The only pleasure that I got from Shakespeare was the pleasure of being commended for reading him. Had I been a child of more independent mind, I should have refused to read him at all. Recognizing the frequent deceptions of memory, I seem to remember that my early liking for the sort of verse that small boys do like vanished at about the age of 12, leaving me for a couple of years with no sort of interest in poetry at all. I can recall clearly enough the moment when, at the age of 14 or so, I happened to pick up a copy of Fitzgerald's Omar, which was lying about, and the almost overwhelming introduction to a new world of feeling, which this poem was the occasion of giving me. It was like a sudden conversion. The world appeared anew, painted with bright, delicious, and painful colors. Thereupon I took up the usual adolescent course, with Byron, Shelley, Keats, Rossetti, Swinburne. I take this period to have persisted until about my 22nd year. Being a period of rapid assimilation, the end may not know the beginning, so different may the taste become. Like the first period of childhood, it is one beyond which I dare say many people never advance, so that such a taste for poetry as they retain in later life is only a sentimental memory of the pleasures of youth, and is probably entwined with all our other sentimental retrospective feelings. It is, no doubt, a period of keen enjoyment, but we must not confuse the intensity of the poetic experience in adolescence with the intense experience of poetry. At this period, the poem, or the poetry of a single poet, invades the youthful consciousness and assumes complete possession for a time. We do not really see it as something with an existence outside ourselves. Much as in our youthful experiences of love, we do not so much see the person as infer the existence of some outside object which sets in motion these new and delightful feelings in which we are absorbed. The frequent result is an outburst of scribbling, which we may call imitation, so long as we are aware of the meaning of the word imitation which we employ. It is not deliberate choice of a poet to mimic, but writing under a kind of demonic possession by one poet. The third, or mature stage of enjoyment of poetry, comes when we cease to identify ourselves with the poet we happen to be reading, when our critical faculties remain awake, when we are aware of what one poet can be expected to give and what he cannot. The poem has its own existence, apart from us. It was there before us and will endure after us. It is only at this stage that the reader is prepared to distinguish between degrees of greatness in poetry. Before that stage, he can only be expected to distinguish between the genuine and the sham. The capacity to make this latter distinction must always be practiced first. The poets we frequent in adolescence will not be arranged in any objective order of eminence, but by the personal accidents which put them into relation with us. And this is right. I doubt whether it is possible to explain to school children, or even to undergraduates, the differences of degree among poets, and I doubt whether it is wise to try. They have not yet had enough experience of life for these matters to have much meaning. The perception of why Shakespeare, or Dante, or Sophocles holds the place he has is something which comes only very slowly in the course of living, and the deliberate attempt to grapple with poetry, which is not naturally congenial, and some of which never will be, should be a very mature activity indeed, an activity which well repays the effort, but which cannot be recommended to young people without grave danger of deadening their sensibility to poetry and confounding the genuine development of taste with the sham acquisition of it.